Oh, hello. Are you interested in learning about the heat exchanger today? Let me show you how we do things around here. So the first step of performing the heat exchanger experiment is making sure you calibrate your water flow rates. We have here two rotometers, large rotometer and a small rotometer. And the large rotometer goes from 0 to 100%, while the small goes from about 0 to 10. So let me show you how we turn on the water. Start up here with our cold water supply line. This is the main valve for the entire heat exchanger experiment. Turn on this valve, water will be primed in both tubes. If you want to use a big rotometer, come through this tube over here, follow it down. It'll come up through here, go around the back, and keep all the pipes closed, but send it through the back tube, which empties down here. We open up this drain, get a little bit of water coming out, and if this were actually on, it would be really, really coming out. Take this bucket, say we did it for about a minute, go over to the scale, weigh it. Now for the smaller rotometer, we're going to do a similar procedure. Start again with the main cold water, open it up. We got a valve over here that sends water down into this flow meter, and then it'll actually come out the back. We can open up another ball gate valve, whatever that is, and we get more water coming out, and repeat the procedure. In the heat exchanger experiment, we actually use two different heat exchanger configurations. There's the shell and tube heat exchanger, shown here, and above it, the double pipe heat exchanger. Now they differ, obviously, in their layout. Double pipe has a smaller pipe surrounded by a larger pipe. If we come down to the end, you can see that, whereas the shell and tube has within it tons of little tubes with cold fluid flowing through it, while the steam wraps around them, being pushed by baffles to heat that up. Now the main objective of the heat exchanger experiment is to compare the performance of the shell and tube heat exchanger to the double pipe heat exchanger. So now let's discuss the starter procedure for the heat exchanger experiment. First thing we need to do is start with the steam. Our steam supply comes in here, it's from the main up in the ceiling, and there's two really important things. We got the main valve here, this controls all the steam. We want to open this fully, we can check the pressure on this pressure gauge, and then this is actually the steam pressure regulator that we will use for both heat exchangers. Before using the steam, however, we have to make sure that all the condensed steam is out of the pipe. So down below, over here, there's actually a blowdown tube valve that you may or may not be able to see in the video that I can open, and I will. And if you could zoom in down here, we should see some of that cold water condensate coming out the bottom. Now, once it runs for a while, the steam actually comes out. Now we're ready to rock and roll. So now that we've turned on the steam in the shell and tube heat exchanger, we have to turn on the cold water as well. Once again, we'll start with the main, and the great thing about the shell and tube heat exchanger is that we can use either the large or small rotometer. I'll demonstrate piping right now and show you how we can do that. If you want to use a large rotometer, you'd once again, you'd have it come in here, go around the back, come scooting through, out here, and then you want to keep this valve closed and open up this one. You can see. That'll send water down through here and into the shell and tube heat exchanger. And the great thing about this is it's a double pass, which means that the tubes go actually all the way down, do a 180 at the end, and come back before exiting down here. Now, if we were to use the small rotometer, we'd once again start at the beginning. We'd open up this valve, keep our big valve closed, send some things through the small guy, take it down here, go around back, do a little spin move, and open up this red valve here. Now, the next most important thing with the shell and tube heat exchanger is figuring out how much heat we're actually exchanging. And to do that, we use thermocouples. So thermocouples are these great little devices that we have all over, and what they do is measure temperature. So essentially, for our calculations, we need to know the temperature of the steam going in, the steam going out, the cold water going in, and the cold water going out. So steam in's down here at 13. This is actually not hooked up. We use the same 13 for the double pipe and the shell and tube. So if you encounter the apparatus like this, you can just remove it, come on over. One of these prongs is a little bit bigger than the other, so you don't plug it in backwards. And plug it right in, and then we'll show up. That cold water inlet is up here, so the outlet's down here at number 14. Finally, we need to look at the steam outlet, so we can come all the way down here to 15 and measure that. But steam's a little tricky because the temperature really should be above 100 the whole time. We're trying to keep the steam saturated. So what we do instead is we can measure the temperature of the water coming out of our steam trap. So when steam condenses in the shell, it comes through the steam trap and it exits out this tube here. When the steam trap's working effectively, it won't just flow, but instead you'll get a whoosh, whoosh. And that's what they're designed to do, because the idea is we want to trap the steam inside the shell while letting out the condensate in short bursts to maintain that pressure. So we can put a bucket down there, measure the amount of condensate, and use that mass to determine the amount of heat lost by the steam. Next, let's move to the double pipe heat exchanger. Okay. So how do we read the thermocouples? Well, we have a thermocouple box over here, and with this adjustable knob, we can dial into any of the 24 thermocouples, and a reading on the computer screen will tell us what the temperature is. It's useful to have your technician sit at this desk and flip through the dial while your other team members are actually playing with the pipes. Congratulations, you finished the heat exchanger experiment. It's now time to shut down the apparatus. First thing we need to do is turn off the steam. So, we can start here, reduce the steam pressure back with the pressure regulator, let all of our excess steam go out the vent, and finally close off the steam here on the main line. This will still be very hot inside the shell and tube, and it will still be very hot in the double pipe, so you need to let the cold water run for an additional 5 minutes. After those 5 minutes have passed, you can come back over, close your cold main line, and close every valve that you use. So typically everything is closed when we're done with the system. Finally, we can't forget safety. The floor gets very wet during the heat exchanger experiment with the steam outlet here, so it's useful to have a team member squeegee the floors and make sure that all water ends up inside this underground well every once in a while. These tubes get very hot. Don't touch them. Don't forget to wear safety glasses. Thanks for listening. Myself and the whole rest of the Two Brains team hopes that you have a very enjoyable heat exchanger experience. Goodbye.